just ask away. So, yeah, so who am I? Most people may know me by reputation, good or bad, but I'm a systems engineer at Aurecon, and I work in the rail and mass transit team. And so I work on a variety of projects across New Zealand and Australia at the moment, and obviously have a background working on cool airplanes and stuff. And so, yeah, I have just for awareness, I have I have an EMBA, and I'm currently going through the University of New South Wales Master of Systems Engineering program, which is quite good. They do it by distance, and I'm doing that as well. So I'm about three out of 8 papers through it. Yeah, so the Technical Leadership Institute is a part of the INCOSE entity that has been specifically set up to try and train people with leadership potential to handle the complexity of modern projects and how to arrange teams and work with teams to get better outcomes. And it's sort of a niche area that's sort of emerged from 2015 onwards, where we're able to sort of draw upon systems engineers and bring them all together into one place to help provide some guidance and training on how to be better, more effective leaders. And so it's quite a neat facility to have. It's open to all INCOSE members. I think one thing that's key to understand with it is it's not so much like a school or a university thing where you go there, you do the homework, you get the grades at the end, and you go on. It's more you get the 2-year induction at the start, or the engagement at the start, and then you move on from there. But you sort of remain connected to the TLI entity, and it's really neat because it creates this community of people that you can draw upon to help spread word and get better outcomes, and help I guess do stuff and get better outcomes across a wider range of people. Yeah, that's very much about a coach and a coachee relationship rather than a teacher-student sort of dynamic. And so it's very much geared towards trying to enable us to lead ourselves in the first instance. And so it's about how do we work out our own problems? How do we work in different teams of people from all over the place, from different backgrounds and different understandings, different industries even. That's plays quite an interesting role. And so I've listed this from the TLI website, and so it's quite I chose to use this direct from the website simply because I thought it was suitably succinct enough to explain why the TLI exists. And so I've just put it on here for reference. Yeah, and so the process of getting into the TLI is not as simple as I turn up one day and choose to do it. It's very much a case of you have to get a nomination from the chapter leader, and I was very lucky and very privileged to be chosen for that. And then then you present your case as an individual to go. So you provide your CV and a rationale around why you have potential or can be saved, or whatever you want to call it. And then you put your submission in, and then they decide whether or not you join. And so I did, and I got accepted, obviously, because here I am talking about it at the other end. And so I was very lucky to be a part of this. And so this was Cohort 9. So as the name suggests, there's 8 before this one, and they start each year, but they run for a 2-year term. And it's quite neat because there's people from all over the place. And I couldn't find for the life of me where the picture was showing it on a globe, on a map of the world where we're all coming from. But obviously most of them come from the United States, because that's a very big systems engineering community over there. But we've got people from the UK, India, and Japan, South Africa, and as well now from New Zealand. And so it was quite neat. These people are all fantastic. They all come from different backgrounds. Some from companies that we're sort of familiar with, the GMs like Dean down on the bottom right, and people from the Aerospace Corporation, which I which was quite interesting. I didn't realize what a big business that is, organization it is. And so, you know, you've got people from aerospace, from cars, from automotive. You've got people from defense backgrounds, all coming into this one place with a common goal. And so it's really neat. And I should just mention I wasn't in the middle with my tie by my choosing. It was just coincidental. Yeah, so the coaches that we have were these three people. Unfortunately, Patrick left after a while, but which was a bit of a shame. But all three of these people were probably more, I'd describe it as far more accomplished than probably I and everyone else realized, if I can put it that way. So it's like they seem very knowledgeable and very caring and great people for a role, but their backgrounds, you know, it's like, oh, I'm sort of interacting with the royalty here, and so, you know, it's quite a privilege to be able to work with or interact with these people. What's quite interesting to note is these people do it because they want to. It's a voluntary activity, so they don't get paid to do this, and I know firsthand that it's a lot of work. And so, you know, I'm extremely grateful for what they've done with setting up the TLI and running it. So just for awareness, this is a breakdown of where people in the TLI as the community come from, and so there's quite a good spread of people through all of the 9 cohorts. So there's actually 2 more cohorts that have started since, which won't be reflected in this chart, but I understand, rightfully or wrongfully, that there's a bit more people from Europe in at this time. But yeah, so it's really quite interesting. So I thought the way I would take this presentation is to give you an overview of what we did. And the reason for that is because I didn't fully understand or appreciate what we would do at the start, but it's kind of good because it means that you're getting the first-hand experience of the program, and you're learning completely fresh. So essentially, this is a map of the program. It's 2 years, and along the way, you do projects individually and as a group over 8 quarters, and they get progressively more challenging along the way for, I guess, obvious reasons. But it starts off with a real theoretical sort of exploration of self throughout concepts like bias and perspective, and trying to set up that process for being able to evaluate ourselves, you know, in such a way that we can learn not just from doing the activities, but also learn about ourselves along the way. And I'll go into that a little bit more later on, because I do have a small description there. Yeah, and so one thing I will mention as well is you can do the course. I'll call it a course for now. You can do the program, but you may not get inducted at the end, and so but you only find out at the end. And so basically, there's a philosophy that it's important to, you know, sustain the effort, I guess. You can put as much effort in as you want, as there's no upper limit, but there is obviously a lower limit of, if you don't do the work, there's no evidence to prove that you've tried. And so basically, yeah, there's a little bit of that, but also it comes down to discretion of around whether or not the individual is suitable for induction, and it's just a reality of a program, and I think it's a worthwhile facility to have, but I think it's important to understand that, and I'll go into that more as well later. So in terms of the actual program, I've broken it down by each quarter. So I've provided a slide that was made by the coaches for each quarter to show what we did, and I think it's a really good summary of the activities. And so right at the start, back in June 2023, we went through some of the self explorations stuff. So we went through the DISC assessment, and I'm still a C, and we looked at the Canifin framework for assessing complexity. It's quite interesting. I will admit to having to watch the name of David Snowden's videos in 0.25 speed, simply because it was quite hard to grasp. He's very knowledgeable on the topic, but it was very interesting, well worth looking into. But essentially, it proposes that there's different circumstances and situations where you may need to tailor the approach to managing it or interacting with the complexity. I won't go into too much more detail here, but it's worth having a look at. So at the bottom center, we have the planes of observation, and I will just elaborate slightly more on this, because why this is important is it goes back to the idea that you can do the work and you can learn about a topic from doing the work, but there's actually value in understanding how you as an individual work with the work. So you're actually developing an understanding of yourself while you're doing it. So you go, what am I doing good or bad, or not, or either, and how do I or do I need to adjust to get a better outcome? And so that was quite a good thing to have set up quite early. It's probably something which we would, I guess, conceptually write off reasonably easily as I have just reflect on what we're doing, lessons learned. But I think it pays to invest in this, and I think it's a perishable skill, and so I think it takes time to learn it. But I think you have to sustain it, and so it's about, and you be very mindful about whether or not your observation is there, because you're sort of looking at yourself, and so you go, you may have, be a little bit harsh on yourself unnecessarily, for example, because you've got no reference to go against. You're assessing yourself, or vice versa. You could go the other way and be overly optimistic about it, or apply other biases to your assessment. And so yeah, there's quite a bit of theory work at the start, and then as we moved on, we added a few extra ways of understanding ourselves by working out how we interact with others. Looked at resources and information sources to try and help ourselves out and understand more about the biases that I mentioned. And that's quite a loaded term in some regards, because some people take the word bias as a negative, but it's not. It's intended as a term for understanding ideas and ideals that are applied to handle uncertainty or information that's provided to you. And so it's quite a good thing to have right at the start. And what that really led to was we formed our first group. There's 3 groups among the 25 or so of us at the time, and basically we had to build a shared model and basically assemble the idea of what is our leadership journey, how are we developing, and where do we want to eventually take it. So it's basically setting up that framework for ourselves and where to take it. So our group, or my group, was created the one down on the bottom left. We call it the cinnamon roll, and it was a term that stuck right through till the end, so it's quite neat. But the idea is basically that we needed a way of accounting for time, like from how we started life right through to now, and then how do we account for iterative development and improvement. And so I suggested the spiral development model as a concept for this, and it was adopted, and then it morphed into the cinnamon roll, which is about food, and so I was more than happy to adopt that terminology for it. And yeah, the other 2 groups presented theirs as well in a different format, but all very interesting. And then yeah, in the third quarter, this is where we started looking more into the application of understanding around biases and understanding ourselves. And so this is where we did a LPI 360 survey. And so we had to pick other people that we worked with who understood us to do an assessment of us, and it had a range of things, criteria for us to be assessed against. And basically we would do it ourselves, and then we'd compare, and then try and understand if our interpretation of how we're applying leadership or receiving leadership as well was consistent with how others would see it. And so it was quite a good and interesting experience. I was quite a little bit surprised, but pleased. I guess if I can add that to it, that what I thought was pretty well aligned with what others were seeing, and so that was quite a, I guess, a validation, if I can say it. But it was good. But there was also obviously areas where improvement could be made, and it was that's where the value is, understanding what can be improved and get better outcomes. And then in Q4 we did a little bit more work. This was a group activity to basically explore a topic, and so we had been given, or somewhere between given and chose to do as my group, developing self-awareness and our ability to lead topic. And so that involved a whole lot of exploration, research, and the idea was that this would eventually feed into a paper that we submitted to the IS conference back in November it was. And and so we were trying to understand the role of self-awareness, which is actually a surprisingly large topic for 2 words. And so we spent as a group a lot of time. It took months and months and months to just do the research and then assemble a paper, which was down to the dotted line for submission. And so that was quite a neat process, because we got to learn how we worked as a group. And so coming back to that planes of observation theory, it gave us a chance to actually sort of work as a group and work out how to work, because we were swapping groups about 3 times throughout the 2-year engagement. And so we had to learn and evolve with the different people. So we may not have necessarily worked with all of the people before. So it was a combination of that storming and norming process, where we needed to understand who they are, what they needed to achieve, and then essentially how do we manage the leadership within a group of leaders. And so that was quite good. And ultimately that led into the paper, which we developed and submitted in November to the conference in Dublin. And it ultimately didn't get accepted, but it was a good experience nonetheless to practice and learn, and then also get the review comments, because it comes back to that idea of feedback as a gift. A former boss may have told me that, and it's good. So we learn and evolve from it. And then part of the next project was to develop a rich picture of communication. So we're given the task of understanding, trying to talk about how can we more effectively communicate between people, as a leader in a role of leadership with people that we're leading. And so basically the idea was how to illustrate it, because it provides a way of communicating complexity in a fun way. And coincidentally, my one is in the background with the clock, so that one made it to the slideshow, so that's pretty neat. And basically, with the premise of mine being around, we may have common mediums, but there's different ways of translating and encoding information. I was inspired by a radio, believe it or not, how you modulate radio signals to get communication. And then heading towards Q7, we had a couple of tasks here. So we were given a new group, and we were given 2 tasks for one of 3 issues. And our one was to understand an issue that is challenging the working groups. So within INCOSE, you have the general membership, which is led by a chapter, and then you have the working group, and then and the last one's eluded me, sorry. But anyway, in essence, the idea was to explore a problem, and our one was for understanding the working group issues and challenges. So there's obviously multiple working groups within INCOSE, and we wanted to understand what is a problem that they have in terms of leadership, and how can we improve it. And what we needed to do was to provide essentially a marketing abstract to describe the problem, and propose a product that we could provide to resolve it, and then eventually we'd provide the actual product itself. And this was really quite interesting because we found that it's very easy once we understood a problem, we proposed a problem, and then we jumped straight into solution space. And I'm very much keen in situations like this to actually sort of really work through that problem space first, and then ultimately the solution will sort of fall out of it. But it was quite interesting with this one because the problem we had was the working group chairs have a lot of work to do, and they have very low engagement among all the participants in the working group. And we were trying to work out, okay, how do you make sure that the people in the working groups are not just ticking the box on the annual subscription page to join it and then just watch, because you wanted to have that facility to better coordinate. And so the solution that was put forward was a handbook, basically, for chairs to work through and help guide the induction process. What was interesting is one of our members, Dean, he is based over in Michigan, and he knew one of the working group leads, and so he took our product over and showed it. And the feedback was quite interesting because this is an example of work imagined versus work done. And so we got a description of their problem, which was different to how we had perceived it. And so we did an assessment of the two parts, how we saw it, how they saw it, and then work it out. Are they what is their bias in the situation? Not in a negative context, just as a way of exploring the scenario. And then we basically went into what I call the spin cycle approach of iterating the product. And so that was quite good. And so the project finished with, I guess, the end of the quarter when we submitted. So we had a deadline to meet, but we set it up in such a way where we did our first iteration, we did a second iteration, and now it's been set up and made ready for someone else to either continue, or we could continue it, or pass it across to the next cohort to sort of pick it up and take it forward. And so it was quite a good practice activity for us. It was quite interesting because by this point in the program, 2 years was quite a long time, and we're working across very different time zones. And so it was quite a challenge to get everyone aligned together. One of the things I did learn from this was about how if you want something done in a group, sometimes it's easier to have an anchor. So you may propose something, even if it's not necessarily the right solution or direction, but sometimes at least drags, I say drags, but I mean, it collects people's thoughts and ideas together better. And so because we didn't have a formal leader within each group, it wasn't structured like that. It was just, individual responsibility as such. We sort of ran into a problem of it was very difficult to sort of get action in a pathway forward, but it was quite interesting to have that anchor approach, because we eventually found that it was quite good, and it sort of led towards that you anchor yourself to an idea, and then you can take it forward and then understand where it needs to be improved or changed. And it was quite an effective thing to have. And then in the last quarter, which is only finished in the last week, we had to provide another artifact, and it was to basically take a summary of everything that we've learned or experienced over the last 2 years and put it in a story. So there's a real theme as well across the entire program of storytelling, and being able to capture ideas and messages into stories. And so we did that with with a couple of things. We created a fancy picture, and then we created a 30-minute video. So we needed to provide a 30-minute presentation, and so we provided a video with each of about, we had about 9 people provide audio recordings, and I assembled them into a video and submitted it. And yeah, it was quite a good summary, because it really sort of brought everything back together towards the end, because you can get very stuck in the tasks, the individual projects and activities that you do along the way, and then you lose sight of that greater goal over top. And then, yeah, this was another version of the story that we had. So where we started, all smiles at the beginning, and then unfortunately we had some people who had to depart, unfortunately, but we progressed through all the different projects, and then we sort of come to the end, and then it's not so much that it's the end of your involvement with the TLI, but it's the end of the engagement. And then we chose some ideas like Alice in Wonderland for going down the rabbit hole as such, for diving deeper into the TLI and its mission. But then we also include references to the Choose Your Own Adventure books, for the idea that it's up to us to basically decide what we do next, because we've had our initial training, and then it's onwards and upwards from there. Yeah, so this is a very short list, and it's not to indicate that I got nothing from it. It's just these were the extra things that I wasn't going to or able to communicate in the main body of a presentation. So one of the things I really enjoyed was being able to meet people from a very wide range of backgrounds, and so it was really neat to meet people in the automotive industry, for example, which obviously we don't have here in New Zealand. Understanding how they're facing a different car market now, with different competitors joining the market from different countries, etc. And that's obviously not directly systems engineering stuff, but it was certainly really interesting. And it was I sort of alluded to it before. There are some concepts which were familiar, and they seem reasonably obvious to each of us, and I'm guilty of thinking perhaps that some of these things like self-awareness and reflection, that I know what they mean. But what was really good about being on the TLI was that it gives you a better facility to do that, and to actually practice, learn, and make you, or encourage you as well, to look into it further and actually work out how you do it. And so it was really good for that. And it's good because it wasn't a course, so it wasn't just that you were receiving quantity 1 theory package or quantity 1 practice package. You were being coached, and you were being encouraged to learn well, I guess, in this space. And yeah, I was very pleased that I got inducted, so that was great. Yeah, and so in my final individual assignment, I put this image in it, and basically what I was proposing was that there's actually, instead of 2 planes of observation, is actually almost a third one. And this is just my proposal. It's just what I think, and here I am espousing it. But essentially, at the bottom level, you have the tasks that you do, as mentioned before. You have a way to learn from doing those tasks, what you're learning about yourself. But then there's almost an extra plane of observation above that about how you go about learning. And the reason that that's useful is because it's got that one layer of abstraction away from, further away from the task. And so we've got the opportunity to sort of look at how are you learning, as much as how are you learning from the task or activity. And so it was quite good. And then as an aside, I learned how to use CapCut, which is completely not directly related. So because I chose to do, we had to make a video at the start as well. I didn't actually mention that, telling a story about leadership and our leadership journey. I chose to do a video and edit it, and so I got to learn in CapCut, and it was worthwhile. What I would do differently if I was to do it again, and I would definitely encourage others to join the TLI, and I would definitely do it again if given the chance. we're supposed to have mentors along the way. You sort of choose one around about halfway through the course. I did, and after spending lots of time thinking about who would be the best placed and able to be my mentor, I didn't do a very good job of using her. And so I would encourage anyone who does take on the TLI to place real emphasis on using the mentors, because they are a wealth of knowledge that I think we probably try to make sure we're not a burden on them, but they're there to help us and willing to help us, and they chose to be a mentor for obvious reasons. And so I would very much encourage that. One thing that I found really hard was getting the assignments done, because you get it's not a huge amount of work, but it's frequent and takes a lot of thought. Like you can obviously put as much work into it as you want. You can put as little as you can get away with, or you can put in more. I found because of the lack of like a rubric or anything like that, there is a tendency to put more in, and I think that's good, because you'll put more consideration and thought into it, and I did. But the problem I had was keeping a track of all the dates was quite hard. So a normal person would be able to set up a calendar, a reminder, and use it. For whatever reason, I couldn't. So I would definitely bother with setting up all the dates in a reminder, because they all over the place, and just a week out, or they get mixed up with other due dates. And I did join the University of New South Wales Systems Engineering program a while back, about a third of a way maybe into this, and it was a lot of work. And so between an already very busy day job, plus the TLI, plus the studies, it's quite a lot. And so I did struggle a lot with time. The thing I would ask people wanting to join is, how much time do you have, and how much are you willing to protect the TLI time that you allocate? Because I think it's very worthwhile doing both the activity of protecting the time for TLI and actually using the time for TLI. And so yeah, that's one of the things I would do differently. So just a quick overview of why I think you should do the TLI. So I think it's very important to understand that the TLI isn't going to be for everyone. So, and this is just my personal honest opinion, but I do think there are people that may view it as as like a course, they do X, Y, Z, and it doesn't require too much of themselves to do. So there is quite a personal commitment to it. So you have to be able to spend the time, be willing to look at yourself, and understand yourself. It is a bit of work, but that's not to say that you shouldn't consider it. It's very much a case of, if you want to do it, please be mindful about this, and then let that be a part of your consideration. But it shouldn't be a deterrent in its entirety. It is an incredible opportunity. I do think I'm extremely lucky to have been able to do it. You will learn a lot, and I think why it's so good is because it takes you out of your own frame of reference. So you won't necessarily, you'll be working with completely different people in a completely different way. And so you get a real difference on top of the theory that you'll have. Yeah, and so, yeah, I think it's quite good. And so I'll just make the offer as well that, because I've gone through the engagement, and I'm inducted into the TLI, if others wish to do it, I'm more than happy to be contacted or help them out with it. So let's make that as an open offer to anyone who wants to be a part of it. I do encourage people to consider it. Yeah, and then this is where I stop talking and stop rambling. And yeah, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to take them.
That was great. Thanks so much, Nathan, for taking us through that with incredible detail as well. Like you said, it sounded like there was a lot of effort that was required throughout the time. So it's good just to get that helicopter view of the whole 2 years. And massive congratulations for being inducted as well. That's a great feat. So well done.
No, thank you.
Before I jump in and hijack things, just want to make sure, is there any questions from anyone in the room that want to ask Nathan?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So I can give one. Yeah, I mean, you spoke a little bit about the commitment required. Can you kind of quantify that at all in terms of how much time it took, and I guess how lumpy the time was as well, if that makes sense?
Yep. So the guidance I got at the start was that it was going to be around about 40 hours per year, so spread out over 2 years. I would argue that that is, I personally think that's an underestimate, because I think that really probably describes the workshops alone. To give, some of the assignments, because you're sort of expected to set, you can do it however you want, but they sort of end up manifesting as group meetings. And I should just mention that time zone is a factor. So they are, at least a little bit considerate that they'll try and group people in different zones of a globe together to try and minimize the difference. But inevitably, you will end up waking up, having to get up at 2 in the morning, or stay up until 2 a.m. to join a meeting and then work through stuff, because it does shift over time. And the workshops are the same, so they're not 9 o'clock in New Zealand time every time. Sometimes they are up, at 4 o'clock, I think was one, and they go for 2 hours, and then sometimes they're at 2, and they shift around, and it's partly out of fairness to try and spread the load to others. But the workshops themselves that happen each quarter are 2 hours, and then the assignments, individual assignments, they if you know what you're doing, I guess you could probably do it quite quickly. But for me, I guess because of the way I work, I tend to sit on the topic and sort of let it do laps in my mind first before I start writing anything, because I need to understand how I want to write it. But that can take, well, thinking about it can take days and days and days, and then writing it might be around about a day, if I'm for what I did. Some people might be more efficient than I, and or some people may wish to do even more. But I would assign roughly a day to really put it down. Some tasks are reasonably straightforward, and it's just writing down your thoughts. But you've just got to obviously have the thoughts to write down. But the group assignments, it would be rude of me not to say that they are quite time intensive. So there can be a lot of research, like for that paper that we did, and it's a reasonably recurring activity, as I understand it, for each cohort to prepare a paper for the IS conference. That went on for months and months and months of weekly meetings, sometimes twice weekly meetings. We kept them to an hour, but they're all over the day. And then obviously you have to prepare the paper, and so that means we did it in sections, so we had a section assigned to each person to go and do the research. So that means trawling through Scholar or any of those other journal repositories, and then pulling out all the bits of information, and then reviewing the papers and crafting a narrative. So that can be quite a lot. So in terms of a number, I'm probably going to struggle to point to a big number, to just one number rather, but it would be quite big. Yeah, maybe if you were to collect it all up, it would be a month's worth of work, maybe. I'm ballparking it here, but it was quite a bit of work, and so I don't want to mislead anyone by suggesting that it's not a lot of work, because there is a lot of work, but it also very much depends on how much you're willing to put in as well, and how many people, how well other people work. Because you'll find one thing that I do think, and I'll say it, the New Zealanders, and to a degree Australians, are quite good at, but particularly New Zealanders, we're very good at getting into stuff and just getting it going, like just get it done. And that worked really well for the projects that certainly the ones I was involved in, because I was quite keen just to at least start something and then make it go. We could iterate later. Yeah. So it was a bit of work, and yeah, it's a bit of a length of string, I guess, if I can say that as well. So you can make it quite short, make it quite long, but to do it justice is really as much as you want to put in.
Okay, thanks.
I've got one just from, well, I've got two from Jess. So I'll just go for the first one. So from Jess, she's just saying that the leadership skills are awesome to develop throughout our careers. Can you comment on what you think the benefits of TLI will be for people who are early, mid, or late career? Are the benefits the same, different? And if they're different, how might they differ?
It's also a good-looking question. It's quite interesting because I thought about this, and we had quite a lot of more junior people on the cohort, on my cohort. So, but there was certainly a spread. I'm not sure I've really settled on an answer to that question, but what I would say is early career people would benefit a lot from having the skills up front and being able to short circuit the learning process and experience process in such a way that they could actually use it earlier and maybe get better outcomes. But that being said, there's no replacement for experience, and so some of the learnings and experiences of the people in the cohort are just, you can't easily replicate that in someone by telling them. And so I don't think the career stage should be a barrier to applying, because I think there's value for everyone. I think it's just very slightly about what the outcome is. So if the goal is to become better leaders, which is essentially what the program is trying to do, everyone's going to benefit. It's just how much opportunity, I guess, there is to apply leadership. People in more senior positions in larger organizations will probably benefit some more, if I can posit that. I'm not 100% sure or certain on that. But why I say that is because in smaller organizations we tend to know each other really well, and so it's very easy to break across that, to interact with people inside or interface, or that you interface with across organizations. But in the larger behemoths, some of the stories that some of the other people were talking about at certain other large conglomerates, which I won't name for obvious reasons, some of the politics that go on inside, that really needed better leadership skills used. There's people across the more senior levels that would benefit a lot and be able to apply those changes at a more top-down, dare I say, approach, and get better outcomes from it. So I think overall I would probably just, there are differences for different people in different stages of their career, but I think ultimately I would say that it almost doesn't matter overall, because everyone's going to get some form of benefit if they're willing to change, if I can say it so bluntly.
Actually leads on to just a question from my end. Just in terms of your experience, it sounds like you've gained a lot from it, I guess, but correct me if I'm wrong, it almost sounds like you've almost gained almost a bit more kind of personal, right, kind of experience in terms of just learning about yourself and how you interact with others. In terms of actually then the application of what you've learned to, your day job, have you found that kind of relatively simple, or are you still looking for opportunities to kind of practice what you've been doing throughout the TLI?
I'm still going to learn and evolve. I think how I would consider the TLI experience is I've got a toolbox, and I've opened it up, and I've got a whole lot of spanners and hammers and stuff in there now, and I'm ready to go and take what I understand of myself and see if I can apply it better. So I think I'm prepared. And I guess that's sort of where the TLI is geared, is about equipping you to work better, or to be a better leader or more effective leader within a technical domain. That last bit being something I should have mentioned right at the start was around, it's very much geared towards working within a technical organization, because it's INCOSE, I guess. And so Yeah, I think that's how I describe it. I would say that it's about setting yourself up, and then having a common baseline across the cohort, and therefore all the cohorts, and then being equipped to take it forward.
Great, thanks, Nathan. Just questions just coming from Danush. So Danush is asking, did you put time in to reflect on what you've learned and applied? So like almost like a self-feedback kind of loop throughout the TLI?
Absolutely. So there was actually a couple of facilities to do that. So we were told, I guess, to set up a journal. So in the early stages, around quarter 2 to 3, I think it was, we were to take a journaling exercise to sort of understand ourselves and reflect on what we've learned. But I do think what's quite interesting was at the end how much, when we came back to it, in developing, when we did our last project, which was to assemble a story of what we did, it was quite good at that point to actually look back, because I know I wasn't alone, because I made comment on it in the last workshop around how it's almost, you almost get so task focused on the actual activity that you're doing, preparing the paper, preparing a presentation or a story, that you almost lose sight of what you're doing on top. And so to a degree, we did have the learning opportunity, but I think it probably needed to be slightly more, because when we got to this end part and we're assembling the stories here like this, it shouldn't have been a surprise, or it shouldn't have been such a surprise for us, but it sort of collectively was, because we got, for whatever reason, we sort of got naturally tied into the tasks. And then when we took a moment to sit back and go, actually, what have we done in the last 2 years? Because 2 years is not an insignificant amount of time, right? So you do tend to, dare I say, forget, or become less familiar with what you did at the start. And so we sort of had that opportunity, but I think the key would be what we choose to do afterwards. And I truthfully haven't set up how I'm going to take it forward in terms of feedback loops, but it's something which we would need to do probably on our own once we've done the TLI, because all of the stuff that we've done is to prepare ourselves for it, for training yourself to be a better leader, or work out how to be a better leader, a more effective leader, in a technical domain. Yeah. But yeah, maybe that's one area where there could be improvement, maybe in the program, and it's not a complaint. It's just it's an opportunity perhaps to to take the time and feedback. I would say though, actually, that there is quite a lot of facility within the individual projects along the way. They aren't specifically for assessing or undertaking a self-feedback, but they are very much about talking about ourselves, I guess, and what we've learned along the way. So I guess it's an implicit function within the individual assignments along the way. Like developing our leadership philosophy was one in Q4, I think it was, off the top of my head, and then understanding how our ongoing leadership journey paper, which was the individual task for Q7 or Q8 rather, and I think I'd say there is, but it's not obvious in the sense of it's not an explicit task or activity that we do for feedback inclusion. It's sort of occurred organically within the project.
No, that makes sense. Thanks, Nathan. Jess has one more question, but before I ask Jess's question, just want to make sure, is there anyone else who has any kind of questions for Nathan while he's on the call? Nope. Okay, I'll just ask Jess's second question, which might be our final one, just due to time here. But Jess is asking, as someone in chapter leadership, we're sometimes encouraged to try to find people for TLI nominations if no one volunteers. What do you think an ideal TLI candidate from New Zealand would look like, knowing what you do and what you know about how the program now works?
Yeah, this is quite interesting, because I'll preface it with I didn't fully understand what it was going to be, or fully appreciate what it was going to be when I started. And like I said before, in the presentation. There's sort of a blessing and a benefit from that, because you are going to be put into a situation that's completely foreign, and you sort of have to learn yourself. But that being said, I don't think there's a need for every person to go in blind. I think it worked for me, but maybe others. You don't need to put yourself through that individually, and so that's why I sort of want to set it up so that I'm contactable, not as scary as I look, and so I'm happy to help others if they want to explore joining, if they want to understand more about what I've done, what would be expected of them. I think in terms of picking a candidate, I think I guess one of the benefits of systems engineers really is that we're all quite well placed for it, because we all sort of have that technical background. But I think one of the things that I would consider if I was picking people, and if there was multiple candidates, for example, wanting to go forward and into the TLI, I think you would have to be reasonably honest with yourself and them about what it is that what is it about leadership that they would want to achieve. Because if it's just the 3 extra letters on your name, it's probably not the right motivation, like it would be for most other things, right? But I would be. It's actually kind of a tough question to answer, if I'm honest, because I think most people would get benefit from it, especially systems engineers working in a place like New Zealand, where we have quite a skilled but small workforce, where the opportunities to interact with other domains and other domains where system engineering is applied is quite limited. And so I think I would probably start anyways with looking at the leadership desire from the individuals and say, are you looking to grow and be more effective in a more broad systems engineering domain, rather than just in your job as such, and I guess also understand that the TLI is not a 2-year program. It's a entry process into a community, and so I guess how willing is someone to sort of carry on and contribute to that? I know it's probably a bit of a raw way of saying it, but knowing the people in this group, I would say most people are pretty well placed. If they wanted to pursue joining, I would think they'd be well placed to go and enjoy it, because there's fun with it as well. It is a lot of work, but it's good.
No, that's great. Thanks, Nathan. And then we're going to have to just pull stumps there, noting the time. But thanks.
I used up the whole hour for a half-hour presentation. It's pretty.
Oh, it's just because
bad. I talked too much, didn't I?
No. It's because the questions. I mean, the questions take up half the time. It shows that it's just a very interesting topic, and people are very keen to know more. So, thanks for taking us through it. It was really, really informative, and thanks for everyone for dialing in. And congratulations again, Nathan, for being inducted. It's great news.
Cool. Well, thanks everyone for coming along. Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.